Today we're working on one of the most useful ways to talk about the past in Spanish: unreal past situations. In plain English, this is the pattern for things that did not happen and their imagined result. The core idea is see plus had done, then would have done. In Spanish, that becomes see plus past perfect subjunctive, then conditional perfect. A very practical model is si hubiera tenido tiempo, habría ido al cine. If I had had time, I would have gone to the movies. This structure is perfect for regrets, imagining different outcomes, explaining missed chances, and those dramatic little life moments where your brain says, well, that could have gone better. It's the language of alternate timelines. Spanish loves this structure, and once you get the rhythm, it becomes surprisingly manageable. Here's the big shortcut. Think of it as a two-part sandwich. First half, si hubiera, si hubieras, si hubiéramos, si hubieran, plus a past participle like hecho, ido, estudiado, visto. Second half, habría, habrías, habríamos, habrían, plus another past participle. So the music of it is, si hubiera hecho, habría pasado. If I had done it, it would have happened. Let's make that feel natural. Listen, si hubiera salido antes, habría llegado a tiempo. If I had left earlier, I would have arrived on time. Notice the pattern? Had left, would have arrived. In Spanish, hubiera salido, habría llegado. A memory trick. The si part looks backward into the unreal past, and the habría part imagines the result. Cause first, imagined consequence second. So if you're building the sentence, ask yourself, what didn't happen? That goes after si. What would the result have been? That goes in the second part. How do you say, if I had had time, I would have gone to the movies in Spanish? Si hubiera tenido tiempo, habría ido al cine. Si hubiera tenido tiempo, habría ido al cine. Good. And yes, Spanish often drops subject pronouns, so we usually just say hubiera tenido, habría ido. Not yo hubiera tenido, yo habría ido, unless we want emphasis or contrast. Let's break the machine into pieces. First, the si part. You'll hear forms like hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, hubieran. Then add a past participle. For example, hubiera comido, had eaten. Hubieras estudiado, had studied. Hubieran llegado, had arrived. Think of hubiera as a little signal saying, this is contrary to what really happened. Then the result part. Habría comido, habrías estudiado, habrían llegado. Would have eaten, would have studied, would have arrived. So if your brain freezes, remember this pair, hubiera and habría. They are cousins, not twins. Similar sound, different job. One tiny warning, because learners often mix them up. Don't say, si habría tenido tiempo. After si in this pattern, Spanish wants hubiera, not habría. So, si hubiera tenido tiempo, correct. Si habría tenido tiempo, not correct here. That's one of the biggest mistakes. And now you're ready to dodge it. How do you say, if you had studied more, you would have passed the exam in Spanish? Si hubieras estudiado más, habrías aprobado el examen. Si hubieras estudiado más, habrías aprobado el examen. Nice. And there's a useful everyday verb there, aprobar, to pass an exam. Not pasar un examen in this meaning. Pasar can mean to spend time or to pass by, but for passing a test, aprobar is your friend. Let's build a few more. If she had called me, I would have answered. Si me hubiera llamado, habría contestado. If we had seen the sign, we would have stopped. Si hubiéramos visto la señal, habríamos parado. Quick side note. Señal means sign or signal. Very useful for roads, phones, and even Wi-Fi. If the signal had been better, we would have heard you. Si la señal hubiera sido mejor, te habríamos oído. How do you say, if it had rained, we would have stayed home in Spanish? Si hubiera llovido, nos habríamos quedado en casa. Si hubiera llovido, nos habríamos quedado en casa. Excellent. Notice nos habríamos quedado. That little nos shows it's reflexive. Quedarse, to stay or remain. In everyday speech, quedarse en casa is much more natural than trying to translate every English word too literally. Let's make this more automatic. I'll give you the English thought, and you start feeling the Spanish rhythm. If they had invited us, we would have gone. Si nos hubieran invitado, habríamos ido. If you had told the truth, people would have trusted you. Si hubieras dicho la verdad, la gente habría confiado en ti. That one is great because dicho is said as a participle. Irregular participles matter here. Hecho, dicho, visto, puesto, roto, vuelto, escrito, muerto, abierto, cubierto. Some of these show up all the time. How do you say if they'd had told me, I would have helped them, in Spanish? Si me lo hubieran dicho, los habría ayudado. Si me lo hubieran dicho, los habría ayudado. Beautiful. And that sentence gives us a nice little detour into pronouns. Me lo hubieran dicho literally packs in to me plus it. In Spanish, pronouns often stack before the verb phrase. Don't panic, just notice the chunk as a chunk. Me lo hubieran dicho. If they had told it to me, then los habría ayudado. I would have helped them. Now here's another practical trick. You don't always need to begin with si. Sometimes the result comes first. Habría ido al cine si hubiera tenido tiempo. Same meaning, same grammar, just different order. This is useful in conversation when the result is what you want to emphasize first. English does this too. I would have gone if I'd had time. How do you say, if we had left earlier, we would have arrived on time in Spanish? Si hubiéramos salido antes, habríamos llegado a tiempo. Si hubiéramos salido antes, habríamos llegado a tiempo. Great. A tiempo means on time, and tiempo can exist, but usually in different contexts. So for trains, meetings, dinner reservations, and your heroic attempt to be punctual, a tiempo is the phrase you want. Let's do a couple more naturally. How do you say if she had seen me, she would have said hello in Spanish? Si me hubiera visto, me habría saludado. Si me hubiera visto, me habría saludado. And how do you say, if I had known, I wouldn't have come in Spanish? Si lo hubiera sabido, no habría venido. Si lo hubiera sabido, no habría venido. That one is golden. Lo hubiera sabido means I would have known it, or more naturally, I had known. And venido is the participle of venir, another useful irregular family member. Now let's put the structure into a tiny story. First, just listen to the whole thing in Spanish. Ayer perdí el tren. Si hubiera salido de casa 5 minutos antes, habría llegado a la estación a tiempo. Si no hubiera olvidado mi cartera, no habría vuelto al apartamento. Cuando por fin llegué, el tren ya se había ido. Si hubiera tomado un taxi, habría gastado más dinero, pero habría llegado. Al final, tuve que esperar 1 hora y pensé en todas mis malas decisiones. Now the same story, one sentence at a time. Ayer perdí el tren. Yesterday I missed the train. Si hubiera salido de casa 5 minutos antes, habría llegado a la estación a tiempo. If I had left home 5 minutes earlier, I would have arrived at the station on time. Si no hubiera olvidado mi cartera, no habría vuelto al apartamento. If I hadn't forgotten my wallet, I wouldn't have gone back to the apartment. Cuando por fin llegué, el tren ya se había ido. When I finally arrived, the train had already left. Si hubiera tomado un taxi, habría gastado más dinero, pero habría llegado. If I had taken a taxi, I would have spent more money, but I would have arrived. Al final, tuve que esperar 1 hora y pensé en todas mis malas decisiones. In the end, I had to wait an hour, and I thought about all my bad decisions. That story shows why this structure matters. It's not textbook language, it's real life. Missed trains, forgotten wallets, dramatic self-analysis on a station bench. Now, common mistakes to avoid. First, after si, don't use habría in this pattern. Say, si hubiera estudiado, not si habría estudiado. Second, don't forget the past participle. You need both pieces. Hubiera plus participle. Habría plus participle. So not si hubiera tiempo, habría ido for this meaning. It should be si hubiera tenido tiempo, habría ido. Third, watch the irregular participles. Hacer becomes hecho. Decir becomes dicho. Ver becomes visto. Volver becomes vuelto. Romper becomes roto. Escribir becomes escrito. These are high frequency and worth memorizing early. Another helpful shortcut. If in English you can say, if I had done it, I would have done that. Spanish will often map very neatly onto si hubiera hecho eso, habría hecho aquello. Hear the echo? Hubiera, habría. Past unreal cause, imagined past result. Let's do a few fast ones in the flow. How do you say, if we had known, we would have helped in Spanish? Si hubiéramos sabido, habríamos ayudado. Si hubiéramos sabido, habríamos ayudado. How do you say, if you had called me, I would have answered, in Spanish? Si me hubieras llamado, habría contestado. Si me hubieras llamado, habría contestado. How do you say, if they had arrived earlier, we would have eaten together, in Spanish? Si hubieran llegado antes, habríamos comido juntos. Si hubieran llegado antes, habríamos comido juntos. Very nice. Notice how the pattern starts feeling less like grammar and more like a ready-made tool. That's the goal. We want usable Spanish, not a museum exhibit. Quick recap. The main idea is unreal past condition plus imagined past result. In Spanish, si plus hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, hubieran, plus past participle. Then habría, habrías, habría, habríamos, habrían, plus past participle. Model sentence. Si hubiera tenido tiempo, habría ido al cine. Your memory hook is simple. After si, look back at the unreal past with hubiera. Then imagine the result with habría. Hubiera, habría. Cause, result. If it didn't happen, but you want to say what would have happened, this is your structure, and you're doing great. This tense can look long on the page, but in the ear it becomes rhythmic. Keep repeating whole chunks like si hubiera sabido, habría ido. Si hubiéramos salido antes, habríamos llegado. Si me hubieran dicho, los habría ayudado. The more you repeat them as music, the faster they become yours. So next time you miss a bus, forget your keys, burn your toast, or make any gloriously human mistake, you'll know how to narrate the alternate universe in Spanish. And honestly, that's a very useful superpower.